Hi there. I'd like to welcome you to the afternoon adventures at the Mooresville Public Library. I'm Bruce Stedman, a NASA Solar System ambassador living here in the town of Mooresville. Today, I'll be showing just some of the information about the myths and legends in space believed by people that lived in the distant past. There are many more adventures and discoveries that await you at the Mooresville Public Library. To start, a myth is something that happens that you don't understand, and it's not true, but you accept it as true. And a legend is a possible historical event, but it's not proven to be true and is usually exaggerated. How do you explain something to a child you don't understand? Like, why is the sky blue? What makes a rainbow? Why is a snowflake not white in color? Well, one way is to make up a story of a myth or a legend. A good example of mythology is Thor, the god of thunder and lightning. He's always having battles when this is going on. And an example of a legend would be King Arthur pulling a sword out of a stone. Did that really happen? Was there really a King Arthur? Naming of the planets was created from the mythological Greek and Roman gods and goddesses, while the week of 7 days was considered by the Babylonians because of seeing the sun, Mercury, Venus, the Earth's moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. According to NASA, the sun has had many names, and from Germany the name Sonne was translated to sun in English. For my show today, the names of the days of the week will use the Old English descriptions except for Saturday. The moon. And for Monday, the Old English for Mani, goddess of the moon, or Mani's day. This was also associated with the word month. The planet Mars, the Roman god of war. And for Tuesday, Old English for two, the one-handed god of combat, or Tuesday. The planet Mercury, the winged messenger of the gods, and also known for stealing in travel. And Wednesday, Old English for the Norse god Odin, or Woden's Day. The planet Jupiter, the Roman king of gods, and for Thursday, Old English for the mythological god of thunder and storms, or Thor's Day. The planet Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, because of being the shining planet, and for Friday, Old English for Frigg, the goddess of marriage, or Frigg's Day. And finally, we have the planet Saturn for Saturday. It's from the Roman god of agriculture and harvest. Now, one thing about Saturday, it's not from the Vikings, but again from the ancient Romans, or Saturn's Day. The planets of Uranus and Neptune were discovered long after the Greek and Roman naming used in mythology, but the tradition was continued, and also these two planets were not known to the Babylonians. I wonder if they knew of them thousands of years ago. Would there now be a 9-day week? Well, we have the planet Uranus. It was discovered by the very famed astronomer William Herschel in 1781. And in mythology, Uranus was the father of Saturn and the grandfather of Jupiter. Planet Neptune was discovered by the astronomers Galilei and Verrier in September 1846. It was originally referred to as Leveria's planet, and he was hoping that it would be named after him. But in December of 1846, it was decided that Neptune, the mythological god of the sea, would be the official name. The planet Earth was not named after a mythological god, but it was related to the mythological Gaia, who was the mother of all life. Traveling back to the sun and the earth, one of the many scary events of ancient times was a solar eclipse. In many cases, it was believed that the end of the earth was near. But today we understand a solar eclipse is simply a shadow of the moon cast on a part of the earth, as pictured here. And do note, the shadow is on a relatively small part of the earth's surface. As illustrated here, the sun's shadow during a solar eclipse is moving from the top right of the screen to the lower left. Would the sun disappear forever? This year in 2020, there are two solar eclipses, but neither will be seen in North Carolina. What happened on June 21st was the eclipse cast over Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. And December 14th, the eclipse will be over Africa, South America, and Antarctica. And as illustrated, at one time it was considered that even magicians controlled a solar eclipse, or a dragon was eating the sun, or even an animal like a very large, unusual looking frog was eating the sun, to chariots being chased by wolves across the sky during the day, causing the solar eclipse. The sun being so important in mythology, there were many story creations attempting to explain the disappearance of the sun at night. The Mayan sun god was Kanichahu. He would shine in the day before leaving and disappearing into the sky at night, transforming himself into a jaguar. And to the Aztecs, there were 5 different suns, from jaguars fighting to floods destroying the world, to even one that would leap into a fire. And looking at the earth, well, it does look flat, even from this perspective. So many stories were told and created. Well, look at the ocean. It looks very flat. And one of the stories was if you went to the edge, you would fall off because Poseidon controlled the ocean. The Maya believed the earth was flat with 4 corners. Each direction had a color with a jaguar of a different color that supported the sky. East was red, north was white, west was black, and south was yellow with green in the middle. It's also very interesting that a jaguar played a major role with the Maya mythology. Many maps from the early years showed that the earth was flat. One from Asia from the year 1150. But what's interesting is one from the year 1893 from the United States. Is the earth really flat? Our knowledge of space increases every day. Less than 100 years ago, it was believed the universe was made of only one galaxy, our Milky Way. William Herschel, the very important British astronomer, drew this image in 1785. Many scientists of that time believed that aliens lived on the moon. Even Herschel made reports of construction projects on the moon. In 1924, the astronomer Edwin Hubble, using the new 100-inch Hooker telescope in California, discovered what was thought to be the Andromeda gas and dust nebula was actually another galaxy larger than our Milky Way. Since that time, only 96 years ago, over 100 billion galaxies have been discovered, with many using the Hubble Space Telescope. Today, as well as thousands of years ago, the night sky was and is a source of fascinating discoveries and entertainment as we look south over Lake Norman. Space is seen today as a place where astronauts from NASA travel to the International Space Station to conduct experiments, where communication satellites for things like television and GPS are located, and even probes sent to the planets and sun in the solar system. Much of the space observation mythology comes from the creation and imagination of the night sky star constellations. Until 1922, there were 48 constellations when it was decided that 88 constellations would describe the night sky. A constellation is a group of stars that represents a person, an animal, a creature, or an object that tells a mythological story. To illustrate how much knowledge has been changed from the first constellation named thousands of years ago to today is when I was presenting a planetarium star show to a group of first graders, explaining that adults that lived thousands of years ago would teach the stars to their children at night because, well, thousands of years ago they didn't have tablets or smartphones. Then one of the first grade students asked me the question, well, could they use their computers to find the constellations? When early people studied the night sky, they believed all space objects went around the Earth, so of course did the stars. Babylonian astronomy divided the night sky into 12 equal parts. The word zodiac comes from the Greek word meaning circle of animals. We see different views as the Earth changes position as it travels around the sun. This is like standing in a room looking at a picture on the other side of the room, then going to that side and looking back. We have different views of the same room. This complete trip around the sun is called a year, and it's how we celebrate our birthdays. An example of the constellations changing because the Earth is changing in space as it's moving around the sun can be shown by looking south over Lake Norman. June 21st at midnight, we see a group of constellations, and then December 21st, 6 months later, looking at the constellations, we see completely different views. What's really great is the technology that we have today to find constellations. It's as simple as putting an app on a smartphone and holding it up looking at the night sky. Shown here is the constellation Cygnus, or the Northern Cross. This is a view of the night sky looking over Lake Norman this summer as we see lots of stars. The red lines are called constellation stick figures with illustrations then drawn around them. Each has a name and a story created by a person's imagination. These again are our modern constellations. During ancient times, the constellations were used as calendars or even for navigation, getting from one place to another. There is so much constellation mythology that today I'll focus on just a few of these stories. Two of the summer constellations looking south are Sagittarius, the archer that never misses his target, and Scorpius, the scorpion with its powerful stinger. Remember Scorpius as its story will be told when the winter constellation Orion is shown. Notice that I left the year beside July off. As years pass, there will be very small changes in the star's position. As an example, I'm using the same constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpius, but what I've done is I brought their position up to July 4th, the year 10,000, just about 8,000 years from now. And you can see that there are just a very few minor changes in the position of the stars. And even going almost 50,000 years into the future, you can see that there are definitely some changes with the star's position in the constellation Scorpius and even some in Sagittarius. Going back to July 4th, Scorpius is easy to find as it forms a J shape, but Sagittarius, with its faint stars, is more difficult. What's been added are some lines that make the shape of a teapot. This group of stars is called an asterism. Ancient people would ask what causes the bright area in the sky. With a bit of luck, making up a story as we're the smart people, or we think we are anyway, there is a teapot with boiling water and steam coming out of the spout, making the bright area. Of course, this is not steam, but billions of stars looking toward the center of the galaxy. And if you want to impress your friends with today's knowledge of space, find the teapot and look a bit up toward Sagittarius A and tell them that's where the black hole in the Milky Way galaxy is located, about 25,000 light years from here. Let's now look north. Well, we have magnetic compasses or cell phones or tablets with a built-in compass, so it's very easy to do. Ancient societies didn't have those wonderful things that we have today, but they did have this group of very special looking stars. We know these stars as the Big Dipper. It's an asterism that forms the shape of a pan. It's part of the constellation Ursa Major or the Great Bear. The companion constellation is Ursa Minor or the Little Bear. Now, what's important with this, if we take the last two stars in the pan of the Big Dipper and go straight ahead, we'll bump into the first star in the pan of the Little Dipper, which happens to be Polaris, the North Star, a very important find. Before magnetic compasses were invented, navigation on the water at night could be a scary event. But knowing the North Star gave the ship's navigator confidence. Today, we could turn ourselves into a compass by finding the North Star. If looking at the North Star and holding your right hand directly out to your side, it would point east. And doing the same with the left hand, it would point west. So, if you turned around back, you would look south. The stick figures shown are for both all the stars connected, for Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and for Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. The modern illustration of both Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, would be as shown in the night sky tonight. In many situations, not only do individual constellations have their own narrative, but groups make up their own mythological stories. Movies have been made of these. An example is the mythological story movie of the Clash of the Titans, as seen using our August and September summer constellations. Our cast of characters in this story are the constellations Cassiopeia, Cepheus, Andromeda, the sea monster Cetus, and the very debonair Perseus. Our mythological story opens looking toward the northern sky in late August, finding Queen Cassiopeia constellation. Depending upon the time of night, she can look like a 3, or W, or M, or E, with her 5 easy to find stars. Her husband Cepheus sort of has the shape of a house. Cassiopeia was always bragging about her beauty and her daughter's beauty. Poseidon, the brother of Zeus, had daughters always complaining about Cassiopeia. Finally, Poseidon heard enough and sent his sea monster Cetus to destroy Cassiopeia and Cepheus's land unless they tied their daughter Andromeda to a rock and Cetus would have her for lunch. Reluctantly, Cassiopeia and Cepheus did that. What should appear but Perseus, the son of Zeus? Perseus had been on a mission for his dad to remove the head of Medusa, which he did. Perseus had winged feet and was flying to Zeus to show him the head of Medusa. In Greek mythology, Medusa was the woman that had snakes for hair, and if one looked into her eyes, they would turn to stone. Looking down, he saw Andromeda and the sea monster Cetus getting close to Andromeda. Without hesitation, he flew between Andromeda and Cetus, pulling the head of Medusa from his backpack, pointing the head directly toward Cetus. Cetus looked into the eyes of Medusa, turned to stone, and crashed into the ocean. The story ends happily as Perseus and Andromeda get married. The reason I chose this particular story is the constellation Perseus. During the course of the year, the Earth traveling around the Sun at almost 67,000 miles an hour runs into bits of ice, dust, and small rocky particles left behind by the travel of a comet around the Sun. This is called a meteor shower. We hear of these, but how do we find them? The constellations can help. The Perseids meteor shower can be seen in the general direction of the constellation Perseus with the help of Cassiopeia and Cepheus. I do want to mention that seeing any meteor shower can be a hit or miss because the best time to see them, midnight to 4 a.m. I have witnessed the Perseids meteor shower many times. Some have been amazing, but then again, some have been a big disappointment. The next meteor shower is the Orionids, associated with the constellation Orion, the Great Hunter. This constellation is very easy to find, with the 3 stars making up his belt. Here he is pictured in stick form with his 2 hunting companions, Canis Major, the big dog that has the brightest star in the night sky, called Sirius, and Canis Minor, the little dog. The constellation Orion has been observed for a long time. In Germany, in a cave dating back about 35,000 years ago, has a cave drawing of Orion. The last mythological story today will have the constellations Orion and Scorpius as our star characters. Orion, the great hunter, boasted to the gods that he could destroy any animal. The mythological goddess Hera was upset by this. She was the wife of Zeus and decided to teach Orion a lesson. She had Scorpius, the scorpion, sting Orion at the same time Orion crushed Scorpius with his hunting club. They were both put in the night sky so they would never see each other, as Scorpius is a summer constellation and Orion a winter constellation. And even our understanding of science today, looking at what is called the aurora, or northern or southern lights, which are just charged particles from the sun, might have been seen as a dragon by early ancient people. What if we still believed in mythology today with our powerful telescopes looking far into space? We have to remember that before the year 1610, people had only their eyes to observe the night sky. What magical stories could we dream up from the images of the massive Andromeda galaxy housing almost 1 trillion stars? The Whirlpool galaxy absorbing another. And what fun could we have making stories of the Ant Nebula or Crab Nebula, the Ring Nebula, or the Orion Nebula, which is really just an area where about 700 stars are being made now, to even a binary star looking really strange in space. Now it's your turn to make a mythological or legendary story with the help of the constellations. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have fun.